Hi, great to be here once again. And let me just start this, and that's the clicker. So I think I'm set. Yeah, thanks that you're here. Talking about, AA games, whatever that is. We want to find that out, and also want to find out what we at Deck 13 did in order to work with this very specific piece of the market, and give you some insights of how we did it, what we found out, and maybe this is helpful for you. And of course, I'm happy to answer all questions you might have. So Deck 13, based in Frankfurt in Germany, about 70 employees that we have there. We're developing our own 3D engine, which is called the Fledge engine, which we used for all our recent games, always upgraded it. And also we have a small sort of publishing or partnership program where we help indie developers to get their games published. So if you're an indie developer and have a cool game, you can always talk to me also. But today I'm here to talk a little bit more about our recent games that we did, especially the Surge 2 that was just released a couple of months ago. So it's pretty fresh. Before, of course, we did the first part of that, and this will also be part of the presentation a little bit. So Surge 2 is a combat-focused action RPG. The budget is in the, you're always, for some strange reason, not allowed to really say the actual budget, so it's in the 10 million euros range, which is, I would say, for some people it's quite a lot. For other people, it's not very much. I would say it is very much if you want to take this money from someone and promise them that they get something back. Maybe they won't, especially if you do this in a country like Germany, where they say this is not a car, we don't understand it, we don't give you any money. So we have a French publisher with Focus Home, and we're publishing on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. And so that was our recent title. And the questions for today would be, how can we build a game that has to compete with these big AAA titles, but we have a smaller budget, but still everybody who plays the game wants to have the same cool expectation and not want to say, yeah, this was probably cheaper in production, I don't know about that, but maybe then it's okay. You can never say that because they just see the game, they pay the money, and they want to have a cool game. So that's like the issue. And it's become a bit different over the recent years. So in the old days, they were just games. There were small games, big games, everything was there. And you just were somewhere, you had a budget, and there were not so strong categories like we have today. Today, it's more like on the one hand, we have like on the left side, the indie developers. They really do what they want. They have their idea. They go through with that. There's maybe just one person doing it or 10 people doing it, whatever. And sometimes or many times they can really consider this art. They just do what they want and they don't care so much about the market. Of course, there's everything. Also, maybe you're totally market focused. Everything's possible, but you're free in the way you're doing this. On the other side, you have the AAA brands. So these are really like big names, big brands, and they're like 8th, 9th installment sometimes, and they sell millions and they have to sell millions. So what is this strange thing in between? How can you call this? And sometimes you maybe think, okay, in between then it's maybe cheaper, maybe it's not such a good quality, maybe it's a rip-off. I just also put direct-to-video in there, if you remember this from the video stores, where it was never in the cinemas. Or is it just money grab? They just do something someone else does, but in a light version or in a cheap version. But that's not what we want to do. That's not AA games, because there's no A in there. That's probably maybe B games like B movies. So that's not what we want to do. Speaking of B movies, this might help us. So what we did at Deck 13, we looked strongly at the movie business and looked at how are they categorizing their things, what are they doing well, what they're doing not so well. And we said, okay, you have similar categories there. So on the one hand, you have like the art house productions, and on the other hand, you have the blockbusters. And also at films, you have something called the genre film, which is of high quality, sometimes, hopefully, when you enjoy it, and but just for a certain audience. So we said, okay, maybe this is helpful. We took a closer look here, and you can see it. So there's a masterpiece to the left, very artsy, very good movie, and Avengers on the right. And in the middle, for example, District 9, which I think cost like $10 million to produce, but this movie looks awesome. And it set even some standards when it was released. So of course, there was a surprise for some people, but this was really successful. And this is basically what we said is what we have to be. Like, we have to be the District 9 in the business if we want to do a good game, want to do a cool game. And we don't want to be this. This is from Uwe Boll, who's also from Germany, and he did some not so well selling and not so well rated movies. So I would say this is a classic like B or even C movie, and we don't want to do this as a game. This is not what this is about. But we want to do things like this. So these are successful AA games, I would say. So on the left we have Greedfall, from the same publisher at least, where we also are. We have in the center we have City Skylines, and then we have Spin Tire Mud Runner on the right. So these are all very successful and very, very different games that are not AAA, but they had a very positive reception, also sold pretty well. Here you can see our own game, The Surge, in the center. We have a Hellblade to the left and A Way Out to the right. And all of these titles were maybe to some people surprising. They were hoping that it will sell a little bit with the games, or even much, as we as developers of course hope we would sell a lot, but still we were not sure. And all these titles sold more than 1 million copies, which is a really good success. And I mean, even though the game to the right was distributed by or produced by EA, they were not sure that the game would ever sell 1 million copies, and so they were super happy about it. So this is obviously the way to go. So the question is, why do these titles work and others don't, and why they're positive? So in terms of Greedfall, maybe you know this, it's an RPG, action RPG, and it's a little bit like Dragon Age, and this was successful because there is no awesome Dragon Age right now, and people were craving for something like that, and then Greedfall came along, and so it sold really, really well. City Skylines, a bit similar, also like a new super awesome SimCity game missing. So they came in there with a really, really cool game, and now like I would even say this is the new reference right now. So these games work really, really well. Looking at Mud Runner, this is more, you can feel these ones are maybe not because they're replacing something that was missing, but these are more like okay, this is for very specific people who wanna mash through the mud with a big truck. That's not everybody, but there's obviously enough people that this sells super well. Hellblade also, they went in a lot of production value, but only very specific. So this game looked super awesome, but it did not like do the whole thing that a very, very big RPG would be doing. Just to get to the point, because our time today is not so long, where would we start? Where did we start in terms of producing this, in terms of really putting this into reality? We said it always starts with your team. You need to look at yourself first and say, okay, what are we good at? Can we do this? So do we understand this genre? Do we understand this spot? And do we love to play it? Can we play it, and can we say this is fun, this is not fun? If we can't do this, it's really, really hard to go into that. Just say, I think this is cool, we should do something like this because it sells, is very hard. Then really think about, why would they choose our game? Why would they do this? What's the added value to a AAA blockbuster? So we add to AAA. We don't like remove and say, we're like this game, but we have less. But we say, we have more than you in that area. Really important. And what is this? What does it make really special? And then, of course, okay, can we build this when we arrive there? Do we have the knowledge? Do we have the tools? Or can we get them during the course of development that we can really do this? So well, we found out that these two things were most important as two separate things that always belong together. We said, okay, we need to have a feature set where we say, this is our game, this is what you do, these are the different things you do. And at the same time, we need a unique game world. Having one without the other is very, very hard. It's easier to produce. Say, okay, we got a cool idea for our game world, and we need to make this playable in a way. But it's never really, really working well. Same with we have features, and, well, people don't care. I mean, can I just have a white blocky guy fighting another white blocky guy? Isn't that cool? No, you need the context, you need some really cool word. If you have this, you can design your IP, you can build a pitch, and you can go and maybe get it funded if everything goes well. How can we pitch something against the AAA games? So let's for a second take a closer look at what they are, and there are some very specific things about the really big budget games. They're a major investment, and it needs to be recouped. If someone invests 100 million euros in something, they damn sure want their money back. So this means I can do a lot with it. I can say, okay, if you give me 100 million, you'll get an awesome game world. You'll get super cool visuals, you get super awesome cinematics. Maybe give me 20 million more for the cinematics, and you also have super nice actors or something. But this thing is should better not fail. You cannot do 10 of those even if when you're EA and they're failing, it's not working for a long time. So you need to be sure. And so you have to please everyone and you have to not do big risks. And that's exactly the point where we have what AA does well, AAA doesn't, and the other way around. So AAA is very good with production value. AA cannot match that and should not match that. Same as AA can take risks and can say, okay, we just target these guys and it's okay. While AAA cannot allow this to happen. They need to cater for everybody so they can put a poster of the new God of War into the city center and people are interested. So that is really worth it. So if we get back to the movies, it's basically the same. So District 9 also doesn't try to do everything Avengers does because they can't and they don't want to, but they have a specific idea and they do this with a super cool performance that looks almost flawless. The other thing now is what do the players want and what do they expect? And this again now is, as we don't have all the players, but only specific players, we need to find them. The good thing is the market is really, really large now and it's growing with a crazy speed. So here is one statistic that puts us about like more than 2 billion gamers worldwide on all platforms combined, of course, but 2 billion, if you need to sell 1 million, you can do this. there's a way to do this. But if you want to do this, you need to target specific people. You cannot just say, okay, there will be 1 million somewhere, maybe, hopefully they buy my game. No, you need to pick your million. You need to pick your guys and say, okay, these are my guys, and these guys have expectations, and they have a lot of expectations. I think MudRunner is a very, very good example because here you can see if this is what people want, then they're very specific about it. If I come along with fantasy trucks or no realistic physics, they will kill my game. They will say, the screws are at the wrong place. When I accelerate, this is totally unrealistic. This is not how mud feels. When I have MudRunner, I need to run through the mud with my truck. And also the visuals, of course, need to be cool. They don't need to be top-notch, but they need to make me really feel I'm there, and also like audio and stuff. So this, I think, is a super cool example. You make this game for an audience, and you need to understand what the audience wants, and you need to deliver that. For us, with the Search Part 1, we also said, okay, we have a pretty tough audience because we want to go in the really hardcore action RPG, close combat genre. So we have Dark Souls, Neo, other games there. So we said, okay, we need to see that this works for people. So we had to really get this fast-paced close combat right. It needed to work really well. And if it didn't, people said, oh, I don't like this aspect about your game because other games are better with that. We have this like bonfire, which is your save point where you save. Souls is a bonfire. With us, it was a like operations point in our sci-fi world. But we have a very tricky mechanic using that. But that people felt at home when we had that. It was a strong point that they say, okay, I understand what kind of game you have. We have very, very tricky bosses. Sometimes they were too tricky. We were like losing like the edges, the corners of our audience because they say, I like your game, I really like it, but I really hate your bosses. So there may be something we should we had to change. Also crafting was a big thing. Search 2, we tried to improve on that, said, okay, let's have more options for fighting with your own playstyle that you want, more freedom of choice. This was all player feedback. So most of the changes we did was according to what players did not like on Search 2. They wanted a character editor, they got this, and still it's not everything in there, because if you say, hey, it's an RPG, what do you like? You get everything. For example, there is no multiplayer in there, and also the story was not so strong yet. But as I said, we need both these things so that it works for the audience. So I can just recommend this talk tomorrow from Christian Fonsbeck, who's working together with us in creating a very cool world and IP and story for the next title. And he will tell you how to really create a world and an IP that really fits to your game. So I can luckily skip this part, which brings us quickly to the feature set because we're running out of time. So really important, like I said, you really need to know the audience and what they want. You need to be absolutely sure what's the core thing, what you have to get right. And this you have to get right. And you don't need to do everything from scratch. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, but maybe you have a new nice and shiny idea about that wheel that is interesting. For us, for example, with Search, it was the body part targeting. You cut off a body part from your zombie machine enemy, and then you can use it for yourself and equip it. So it was integrated into the crafting system and in the live action, which gave it a really, really good mix. And just don't go too wide. Everybody wants this, and every time you need to scale it down again. So try to find the right things. And find the right game world that fits to it. Like chopping off body parts in a fantasy world is much more strange than chopping off machine body parts that you can maybe refit. So find the right world for your systems. So I'll skip over this quickly because we're running out of time. Destroy All Humans was an IP, maybe some know it yet, where they really did this and said, okay, we need to focus on, we don't have such a big budget, we need to focus on smaller things. We want to have exploration in the game world, but we make it in small pockets and not the GTA open world. Weapons, we don't have so much, so what's cool with our mechanics? We have our Zap-O-Matic super laser, destroys everything, fits to the mechanics, why not? With that, they could, with a smaller budget, really achieve their goals and have an IP that ran very, very well and is just now rebooted by some friends of ours, a German studio. And so as a conclusion for the feature set, you need to follow the genre rules. That's very important. And sometimes you need to break out of them to make your game special. If you just follow just all the rules, then nobody will remember your game. And if you have these things that break the rules, they can sometimes impact even the AAA games because they say, okay, this game had a super cool idea, whatever, slowing down time or whatever new mechanic you have in your game. And it might flow into the AAA games and you might feel honored. Maybe don't get money from it, but might feel honored. Just shortly, what not to do, of course, is just don't focus on the stuff that's just expensive because the big ones will always be better in spending money on that. And also don't focus on putting everything in the game you can because also there, the big ones will just be bigger and better. This should not be you. Small but great always beats long and sort of okay, but I forgot about this game. So final conclusions are find out what you can offer, what others cannot offer. Respect the rules of your game, of the genre of your game. Aim for really getting your audience. Know your audience, get them. Break out a little bit from the conventions and build on what your team can do. Don't ever aim for a mediocre copy because you just want to do something unique. And with such a budget, you should be able, if you're able, to focus. And finally, if you have fun with your game, if you play it and you like it, then you can be pretty sure that others like it too. This is our team watching a famous streamer play the game, and they were super hyped, and he was super hyped, and everybody had a lot of fun. So that's my final slide. Thank you very much for your attention.
A couple of minutes for questions, if anyone would like to ask something.
So I think you made a really good point about the importance of knowing your audience, making sure that you're spending your few resources building exactly the right features. How do you go about getting that information? How do you go about getting to know what your audience wants and who those people are and what they're going to need?
I think first of all is what I also briefly mentioned is it helps a tremendous lot if you're from the audience yourself. Then you have the base knowledge and say, I think these things are important. This is what I like about the game. And also from your team. If your team has to learn everything from scratch, it's pretty hard because then they really have to do all the research and get into this new role. I think this is super important. And then really we ask them. So of course we read a lot. We say, what do they like about other games? And we try to really get an idea for that. And as soon as we have the first prototype or the first pitch, we always expose that. We get people playing it, looking at it, giving us feedback. And there's also companies out there that can give you that information. So sometimes you can like give an unfinished alpha version to someone. They will tell you, okay, these features are really good, but I think you're missing these features, and this one really sucks. You have to change that. And most of the time you think, what do they know? But in the end, they do know. And it's the same that you read in the reviews in the end. So better change it before the reviews and not after them.
I was just wondering, it wasn't so long ago that people were predicting the decline of mid-market games, mid-tier games. But as you've shown with a number of really great examples, really telling ones, that this is a sector of the market that's coming back in a big way just in the last sort of 3 or 4 years. I would just like to sort of pick your brain about why you think so many people were predicting the decline in the market and why they got it so wrong.
I think it's a little bit like with the series you see on Netflix and other services, that you can have a reasonably large budget to cater for a specific audience. So with Netflix, you can do The Witcher on Netflix. You have enough people who like to watch The Witcher on Netflix. But imagine that 10 years ago, everybody would have said, what, you spend, what, $1 million or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 per episode? That's crazy, nobody can do this, So I think it's changed, the budgets are a bit higher, and you have a target group that is large enough. So there's enough gamers in the market. You can get them with the right tools. You don't have to put it on the shelves and maybe lots of people ignore it. So I think we're better at targeting. We have more people and we have the budget to work with it. And I think these things really make it work better than maybe before.
One quick one. What would you consider being like a big enough core hardcore group that would kind of follow that specific game?
I think that really depends on how much you spend in development. So if you spend like 10 million in development, you should sell it for at least 1 million times in like first 3 months. So if that's your goal, you need to know, can I get 1 million players in the first 3 or 4 months? And then you need to look at, okay, what did they buy before in that genre? If you see it's what you want to do, a point-and-click adventure game, and then you see, okay, how much did an average point-and-click adventure sell in the last year or so? You will see, okay, maybe, I don't know, 20,000 units on average or 10,000. They say, okay, maybe I cannot spend 10 million on that. So I think it really depends on how much you want to spend, and then you know your target group and say, okay, I think they will be enough for that. And you can really find out with other games and compare.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Jan.
Thank you.